Welcome back to Media7. When the Herald on Sunday entered the fray 6 years ago, many people doubted that the weekend market could sustain a new paper. As it turns out, APN's Sunday tabloid has prospered, and resources have gone into the Saturday papers too. But is the strain starting to show? Jose Barbosa met a man who knows the numbers.
This is Martin Gilman. He's a dashing media consultant and knows a thing or two about the printy newsy game. He's agreed to act as our guide to the weekend rags. First up, let's have a look at the Fairfax stable.
The Sunday Star Times, being a broadsheet, a traditional broadsheet paper, has the appearance of greater gravitas. And it's gone through quite a few changes over the years, and it's gone, sometimes the changes have made it more mass market, less appealing, and it's dropped readers. Like all newspapers, it struggles for journalistic content.
But what will really be troubling Fairfax is the performance of the Sunday News. In only 1 year, it's lost 20,000 in circulation.
The Sunday News desperately needs a relaunch. The market's moved on, and I think the Sunday News hasn't managed to move with it. There's no reason that the Sunday News can't survive as a newspaper. If you look at the UK, the tabloid press is easily the biggest, and there is space in the market.
That brings us to APN's Herald on Sunday. It's the only Sabbath paper to see a reasonable increase in circulation.
Well, APN have invested in the future of the product. They've recognised the fact that the market is changing and that readers are looking for different things. They're not just looking for hard news.
The paper does draw you in, mostly because it's the visual equivalent of being turkey-slapped by Richard Lowe.
Because if you compare the Herald on Sunday to the Sunday News, the front covers between the two could be mistaken for one another. In fact, the Herald on Sunday is often just as sensationalistic as the Sunday News would be. But the Herald on Sunday has overall more physical weight in that there are more pages and a lot more supplements, whereas the Sunday News has stayed pretty well as it is.
But in an apparently saturated market, is there any room for the papers to expand?
Jose Barbosa there. I'm joined now by journalist and media critic Dennis Walsh, and we are awash in newsprint, aren't we, Dennis? There's no shortage of this stuff.
There it all is, and in many ways the weekend market is the cutting edge of it. In some ways, daily papers have become the wallpaper, the bowls club, if you like, of New Zealand journalism. Whereas the Sunday papers are more like the strip club. That's where all the bump and grind is, the big action, the hot stuff.
Indeed, and it has to be said, the paper that's still adding circulation, all the more striking because it was not taken seriously by Fairfax when it launched, is the Herald on Sunday. Usual mix of property, celebrity and tragedy. They've got the formula right, haven't they?
They have, but they've got it right at the expense of the Sunday News, and I don't think Martin Gilman quite cottoned onto that. He thought the Sunday News needed a relaunch. But this is a paper that has lost 32,000 in circulation in the last 2 years. That paper is a cot case. It's headed for the bin. And Fairfax must be seriously worried about what it's going to do with it, because although the Herald on Sunday purports to be a little more like an upmarket tabloid, really it's getting trashier by the day. And it is undoubtedly colonising the kind of territory the Sunday News used to occupy and eating up its readership.
Were you disturbed by David Fisher's story last weekend, the Heather Roy story? It's strongly implying, obviously a planted story from one faction and act, that Heather Roy was shagging her advisor. Turned out to be baseless. It's an appalling story. Are you shocked? I was.
No, I'm not, because I've seen it all. There are so many stories about Heather Roy going around. I think we need a nightly Heather forecast, actually, Russell, to know which way things are going. No, nothing shocks me anymore about the Sunday papers. Even the Sunday Star Times is not above doing a little trash. In fact, a few weeks ago, I was critical of them because they led the paper with a story about Phil Goff's daughter being on drugs in Melbourne. That might have been a small item, but it was not a front-page lead for a paper like the Sunday Star Times.
And you say that. You say a paper like the Sunday Star Times. Do we have this expectation that because it's a broadsheet, it should have a higher tone?
We do, and I do think there is a place in New Zealand for a quality Sunday, like the Observer in Britain, for instance. It is there, it is potentially there, but the Sunday Star Times seems determined to drive itself away from that core readership that wants that kind of paper. There are many people out there who are never going to buy the Sunday News. They're never going to buy the Truth Weekender.
Truth Weekender, which
is one we haven't mentioned.
No, I didn't know it existed until last week.
And I'm not sure they're going to buy the Herald on Sunday when it looks like the way it is. You talk about the Herald on Sunday launching 6 years ago. Let me remind you that when it did, it had type, it had text on the front page. Now it's all images and trailers for what's inside.
But to give it its due, and to give David Fisher his due, it routinely has many more news stories than the Star Times does, doesn't it? There's a lot in there.
There is, and I don't do it down. I think they've hit on something there, and as you say, they've confounded their critics. Good on them. They put on 5,000 circulation in the last 6 months. Now that's phenomenal, because just about every other newspaper, or daily or weekly in New Zealand, has stood absolutely still or gone backwards in the last 6 months. So good on them. That's a tremendous result. But I think they're doing it not at the expense of the Sunday Star Times so much as the Sunday News. They are, as I say, grabbing readership hand over fist from that paper.
Now, there's been a lot of talk about Shane Curry moving to the Herald proper, and that he's going, Janet Wilson, among others, have said he's going to take it down market. I have to say that the redesigned Weekend Herald, the Saturday paper, looks gorgeous. It looks like the Observer or the Guardian, doesn't it?
We can't talk about the Sunday paper market without talking about the Saturdays as well, and that's a big factor. The Weekend Herald has for a long time been the Herald's flagship paper, and it's sailing ahead full steam. It's a pretty clean, attractive, strong layout, as you say, in that mould, and I don't think they can go too far wrong with that. The question is really what kind of challenge this lays down for Fairfax. Let me remind viewers that the Weekend Herald and Herald on Sunday are both from the APN stable, whereas the Sunday News and the Sunday Star Times and the Weekend Press and the Weekend Dominion Post, they're all from the Fairfax stable. Now Fairfax must be very worried by this weekend challenge. Weekend Herald dominates Saturday, Herald on Sunday dominates Sunday. Where's Fairfax in this? They've got to be asking themselves some hard questions.
And I get the impression that APN aren't even thinking about the competition. Their aim is to get more female readers in, which is why we've got Weekend, which is a spectacularly flimsy magazine. I mean, is this really what women want?
It's not what I want. I have insertophobia. I instantly react violently against anything that falls out of the broadsheet when I open it up. And there are so many now. Even the Herald on Sunday, which is a tabloid, has about 3 inserts. And the Herald on the Weekend Herald's gone overboard for them as well. We have to conclude, Russell, reluctantly, whether we like it or not, that this is doing the business for these papers. Look at the figures. But as I say, we come back really to what this means for the big rival in the market, Fairfax, and the question facing them is what are they going to do with the Sunday News? Are they going to fold it completely, maybe turn it into a purely sport paper, perhaps focus on rugby league for the Auckland market, or will they collapse it into the Sunday Star Times and fuse those two papers into one?
Dennis Welsh, thank you very much. Finally tonight, the name Herman Leonard might not mean much to you, but his images might. Sarah Daniel compiled a montage of the work of the great jazz photographer who died last week, aged 87. We were also sorry to see the passing this week of one of New Zealand's greatest scientists, Sir Graham Liggins. More than most of us, he made his mark, and his name lives on in Auckland University's Liggins Institute. And with that, our show. Thanks again to Harold Mitchell, Mike Williams and Dennis Welsh. And thanks to you for watching. We'll be back with Media7 at the same time next week. Until then, goodbye.